welcome back to the shop. This is Zach over at NV Woodworks. Time to do the X-CARVE video, finally. So, it's been a little while since I actually got the machine from Inventables, but I wanted to make sure that I actually had some experience and got my hands dirty with it a little bit before I actually started talking about it in depth and doing this video, the real review. So, a few months ago, Inventables contacted me and said, hey, would you like an X-CARVE in exchange for a review? I said, that sounds great to me. So the deal with this is, it's not like they gave me a machine for free, so there's a little bit of bias, I guess, in a sense there. But there's nothing, I don't have to say anything about it. There's no stipulations of how I need to portray the machine. So I think that this is a pretty cool thing. I don't think there's really much bias in this whole review. It's going to be my honest opinion of how I felt about it. So I think it's better than some things where people are just hawking other people's tools. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of talk about some of the things that stood out to me, points that I want to make about the assembly, things that I had difficulty with, and you know, the highs and the lows kind of doing the assembly, how it went for me. The other thing is I have my first real project that I'm going to do. I've done a few things with testing and here and there, that kind of stuff, but this project that I'm going to do at the end of this video fits more into what I do with casting. I'm going to make a mold for pouring ribbons, the ribbon casting kind of materials, and I'm going to use the X-CARVE to do that. So I think that should be kind of fun. So stick around, we'll start talking about the assembly, and then at the end, like I said, we'll do a project. Alright, so I got everything together and I just wanted to kind of go through the positives and the negatives. I'm going to first start with some of the positives, things that I thought were good or that I liked about doing the assembly, things that were good about Inventables or whatever. So off the bat, I found that their instructions were really good. For the most part, this all went together. All the nuts and bolts, putting things together, went together really easy for me. And I think that their instructions made that possible. They have like videos, pictures, and like just step-by-step written instructions that you follow. And it made things very simple. Now, one thing that I would recommend you do, or I guess the way I should say this is one thing I think I should have done that would have made it even easier for me, is to really look at pictures of this. Like understand and look at all the components before you put it together. I think that'll make you know, the steps seem more logical. Like I didn't really study this machine or even pictures of it. I kind of knew what they look like, but I didn't really focus on any of the components. And so I just opened the boxes and went to step one. I had no clue what I was putting together. You put together this little carriage first, right? And I'm like, okay, whatever. I don't even know what I'm doing or how this thing works. So my recommendation, and I wish I would have done this, is to really kind of go through. They even have like CAD drawings where you can kind of blow up the, you know, explode the parts. Look at them, see what's going on so you understand what you're doing. But again, they have all that stuff. It just, I didn't do it, and I wish I would have. But pretty good stuff. You know, the instructions, the assembly, everything went together real simple. The wiring's not very difficult. You got to keep the wires tamed. But you know, where you put them and all that kind of stuff, that was all very clearly labeled in their instructions. I'm happy with the machine itself. I've ran a couple things. I have no clue what I'm doing with CNC. I've never used one before. I do have a laser engraver, but it's not exactly the same thing. So I don't consider myself to have experience with CNC necessarily. And I'm finding it to be pretty easy to use for the most part. I have a lot to learn, and I think that it's, you know, CNC in general, there's a lot to it, you know, and you need to approach it just like any other technique or tool or, you know, machine in the shop. You need to learn how to use it and get some practice with it before you're going to be very proficient. But overall, it's pretty simple to, you know, drop some shapes or whatever into easel and then hit go and cut something out of wood or whatever it is. So I've gotten pretty decent results. I think I could even fine-tune some of this stuff a little bit more, learn a little bit more about the software side of things, get better with the design process, you know, designing the shapes and all the stuff that I want to make. But overall, pretty good. I'm happy with the machine, and it's done everything that I've asked it to so far. A couple of negative things, or things that I think could be improved upon. in the instructions, I already said that they had really good instructions, and I think overall the instructions are very good. There's a couple points that I think that they really need to improve on, though. One thing is, in general, you know, you go to a website and it has, you know, all the instructions, step 1 and this and that, but all of that is pretty much focused on the 500 millimeter, the smaller one, and I have the 1000. The problem is there's a few times where, you know, it's like telling you what to do, and then it's like, oh, but if you have the 1000 millimeter, you don't want to do that. That's the worst thing in the world. That is the most frustrating and annoying thing, and I think that they just need to have, hey, if you have the 1000, here's your instructions. Don't worry about how the 500 goes together. If you have the 500, here you go. Don't worry about that the 1000 millimeter one. Separate those out, have 2 sets, and I think things will be a lot more smooth, especially for people that really hate it when they say, oh, but don't do that if you have this one. That's the worst thing. But like I said, it wasn't a big deal. It's just kind of frustrating. The other thing that I would say is I had the most trouble, or the most challenging part of putting this together was the electronics. I'm not necessarily terrible with that kind of stuff, but that's by far I have the least experience dealing with electronics. And I think that it'd be nice to expand and make things a little bit more fine details about that. You know, beef that up, that portion up. Explain what all the components really do. I think that would help in the instructions. It would have helped me, I think. And the other thing is, I noticed a lot of people that, you know, were building their X-CARVEs were kind of like, oh, now I got to do the electronics. Like, they already knew that that was going to be the worst part. And so I'm not sure if this is just my own perception, but it seems to me that the electronics part, a lot of people are going to have trouble with that, or just do not have experience. And I think that they could really focus a little bit more on that, make it a little bit more clear, and expand the details of that section to make it go a little bit more smooth. But again, overall, I really didn't have any problems necessarily. The minute that I turned the power switch on, it worked. So I got through it no problem, even though there were a couple difficult spots. Now, one other thing that kind of goes with the electronics section of assembling this, there's some soldering to do. And I don't really have any experience soldering. I've done it a couple times, but it's, you know, I don't know exactly what I'm doing necessarily. What I found was I don't have a very good soldering iron, and that's actually the reason why I have never been very good at soldering. One part of this, you have to actually solder pins into a circuit board, and they're very close together, and you got to use a very thin tipped soldering pin to do that. And there's a couple other things that you have to solder as well. What I found is the soldering pin, and it was kind of the pin style, looks like kind of like a pen or something like that. The one that I had did not get hot enough to melt the solder. And it took me, I sat here for 5 hours trying to do those pins on the circuit board, and finally I was so pissed, broke the soldering iron and went and bought a new one, hoping that that was the problem. And it turns out that was the problem. I went and bought a Weller pin style, it runs much hotter, and I literally in like 2 minutes did all the soldering that I needed to. And so that's my big tip. Go get a good soldering iron before you start doing soldering, and it goes a lot smoother. Alright, so we got it all carved out. This mold is ready to use. I actually can't wait to try it out. A couple notes about the project, let's say. One thing, I actually had to stop in the middle of this whole thing because it was taking forever. I had the original settings, which I think are the defaults for HDPE. I may have changed something there. I don't know if it's, I can't be certain that it's the default that they give you. But it was running at 15 inches per second feed rate and like 0.02 depth per pass or something like that. It was really low, and it was going to probably take 8 hours with those settings, and literally I started so late that I had to just shut it off because I had to take my computer on again. So I had to redo it. The other problem I had was my Z-axis was actually a little bit, crooked, or it wasn't perpendicular to the base. So I was getting a deeper cut on one edge, a deeper wall, let's say, and I had to fix that up a little bit, and I got that thing fixed. That was my fault. I just didn't actually do the proper alignment when I was putting that the Bosch Colt mount on. So fixed that thing up and then redid it, and I used different settings. Plus I went from a 3/8 inch bit to a 1/2 inch bit to take more at a time. I figured the Bosch should be able to handle that, especially with HDPE. It's pretty soft. Excuse me. So what I did was I upped the feed rate to 40 inches per minute from 15, and the depth per pass I went to 0.05. I didn't want to take a big chunk necessarily deep, but I wanted it to kind of try and zip through this a little better. That worked out better. It probably took an hour maybe. So worked pretty good. And again, with some of those settings, I'm not an expert at the CNC stuff. I'm going to really have to learn settings and feed rates and all this stuff, and material, that every material is going to work a little bit differently. So I have a lot to learn, but for the most part, everything worked out fine. So I'm going to pull this thing out. I'm going to try it out, so we'll kind of see how this thing worked, if my plan worked. Some of this stuff, the mold may not work, but I think that the CNC machine did exactly what I wanted it to. All right, well, one thing I noticed after I pulled it out is it's rocky now, and I don't know if that had to do with the cutting kind of heating this thing up and pulling it up or what, I don't know, but luckily it's not a big deal. What I'm going to do is just mount it to this piece of melamine, hopefully. Yeah, it fits perfect. So I'm just going to screw it down, and that way it'll stay flat. No big deal. So we'll do that real quick, and then we'll get into pouring a casting with this thing and see how it works. Alright, so here's the moment of truth. Let's see how this did. I obviously didn't use enough resin. It's below the line, but it's pretty close. I think the problem is, I think my table's a little bit crooked, but no big deal. I got a ribbon out of it, so let's see how this mold works. Let's get this thing out of here. A little area right here. Still a little sticky. Oh, look at that. Like a charm. Alright, well there you have it. I got my ribbon material. It's pretty even. Now one thing that didn't happen is I didn't actually fill the tray. So, but I still got it pretty even. There's just, the edges are a little bit low. So next time I'll fill it a little bit more and it should be even more even. So I'm going to leave this thing laying flat so that I can cut it out. I'm actually looking at the X-CARVE thinking, oh, maybe I could cut little shapes out of this, or who knows, it's going to be really fun. So this project, it was pretty simple. I didn't really do a whole lot of brain-busting, crazy design work or the carving part. It's extremely simple. But, it just goes to show you that, I can use that thing to do whatever kind of patterns, shapes I want. And I got to do this to, now I'm looking at this mold going, well, I could do different types of shapes. Who knows what I can do next time. So, pretty fun. I'm going to leave this again. One thing I wanted to mention is the bottom is, there's texture to it. I don't mind that, actually. And one thing that I'm not sure if I mentioned in the ribbon video, I actually do not want to be casting very shiny objects. These ribbons, if it's, the top side is pretty shiny and smooth, I will scuff that up with some 80 grit before I recast it. That helps to get a good bond with the next pour. So, anyway, I had a great time, putting the X-CARVE together, playing with it. I still have a lot to learn, and I'm going to be testing new materials. Actually, Inventables sent me some other materials. That's one thing that they have, is tons of different materials: wood, different types of plastics. They even have linoleum for stamps. Tons of stuff on their website. And one thing that I did notice they have is bamboo plywood, which is not something that you can really get too many places in small chunks. So I'm going to be playing with that, see if I can work these materials somehow into casting. More videos are coming, you know, in the future with the X-CARVE. If I can come up with some really cool ideas that will help me with casting and is going to be useful to my audience, basically, I will do more videos, definitely. So, yeah, pretty cool. Everything worked out really good. I got some different plans for different molds with HDPE, actually. So the gears are spinning in my head. So I just want to thank Inventables for sending me an X-CARVE. I'm going to keep, you know, getting better using it and learning more stuff about it, getting better with the graphics and cranking out different stuff with it, hopefully. So, yeah, thank you for sending it and all the help that you guys gave me getting everything going with this. So I hope this project was fun to my viewers. I hope it wasn't too boring, you know, simple, but something different, hopefully, that you haven't seen with the X-CARVE yet. So anyway, if you have any comments or questions, you can leave those down below on YouTube. You can email me at zach@nvwoodworks.com. I'm out there on Facebook and Twitter. So yeah, so thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one.